Hi, I'm Maggie Drew, and this is my presentation on food insecurity in America. So I want you all to think about what you can't do on an empty stomach. This is a question that the Community Food Bank of America asks. There's many things you can't do. And for 42.2 million Americans, this is a reality. They don't have the proper sources to get food to do basic daily things. This leads to, or this is, a cause of many things that will be addressed in this. I will look at food insecurity. I'll explain what it is. I'll look at the fact that the location of Americans and poverty plays a large part into food insecurity, how it greatly affects the health of these people, and how fresh food, government funding, and education can help to fix these problems. So food insecurity is defined as access by all people at all times to sufficient food for an active and healthy life. For 42.2 million Americans, they don't have this. So they live every day without the basic food needs. Basic food needs is 1 pound of food a day. That's all it is, and that's not including fresh produce or dairy, just grains, meat, and many people don't have it. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Healthy People Initiative wants to increase this food. They say this food intake. They say that households that are below the poverty line, that are largely minority, that don't have access to food such as rural or inner city homes are greatly affected and lead to food insecurity. They say that this is greatly triggered by stress such as losing a job, poverty, and that it leads to not being able to feed a family, but also not being able to pay for utilities and for household needs. So, one of the biggest causes of food insecurity is locations. While inner city people do have problems with food insecurity, rural America, mostly the South, has the biggest problems that we see. This is largely because of what we call the brain drain. The brain drain is young people who graduate high school, see that there's really nothing going on in their town, and they leave and they don't come back and they don't give back to the community in which they were raised. So while they're leaving, the older populations are also, getting older and they're dying off. And so there's no reason to put a grocery store in town anymore because really nobody lives there. And that creates a food desert where there's no grocery store for miles on end. So there's no chance for you to get there. And for many of these people who live in the rural South, transportation's a huge problem. They don't have their own car, and because there's no people around to have a grocery store, there's no people around to put public transportation. So they don't have grocery stores, and they don't have place or ways to get to the closest one. And then social integration plays a part. Because they are so spread out, they don't have that community involvement, that ability to ask their neighbor down the block for, lasagna if they have leftovers, that sort of thing. Another huge factor in food insecurity is poverty. The recession of 2007 greatly affected many people, and we still have a 15.1 unemployment rate here in America. Without the money to buy food, that's one of the first things that Americans cut. They say, we don't have money, so we're just going to cut out our food budget. And that really, obviously, if you don't have food, you can't do basic things. And community programs can only do so much. There's only so much government funding that can go out. And when you go to things like food banks, which are privately funded, that relies on people in the community to keep bringing in money, to keep volunteering. And when that doesn't happen, those places close, and people who are, under the poverty level don't have the ability to get these resources to help themselves. So, when they don't have food, when you're food insecure, it greatly affects your mental and physical health in adults. It leads to depression, weight gain, chronic disease, and birth defects in pregnant women, but also in adults in general. For children, it leads to affects their behavioral issues. It affects their ability to learn in school. It affects their ability to grow healthily and normally. So ways we can help. We need to implement more fresh food. This can totally take place in gardens, community gardens, bringing people together to learn how to plant, to learn how to grow, because when you can grow your own vegetables, you're self-sufficient. You don't have to worry about getting to the nearest grocery store or relying on any transportation. Ways we can do this will be discussed later, but we need to teach people how to plant their own veggies, how to plant their own produce, so that way they can help themselves. Many people actually, such as migrant workers, know how to plant their own foods. A community organization in California is working with these migrant workers who know how to plant their own produce in Mexico but don't know how to plant it here in California. And by helping them integrate into their community, they're able to become self-sufficient. We also need to totally support our government programs. Government programs such as SNAP give out food stamps, but giving that allows people who are under the poverty level, who don't have money in their budgets to buy food, the ability to feed their families. The National School Lunch Act gives out lunches and breakfasts and even sometimes dinners free of charge to over 30 million Americans. And then we have government assistance such as the temporary assistance of needy families, which allows for families and individuals to have this public transportation that they don't have access to normally. Lastly, we need to educate individuals. We need to teach them how to grow their own gardens like they're doing in California. And we need to teach them that there is no stigma around being food insecure. Many people don't go and get the help they need because they're embarrassed or they're too prideful. And we need to tell them that it's okay to reach out and to get the help you need. So, community gardens. We need to create that social integration between schools and individuals with people who know how to set up gardens, whether they be local farmers or local landscapers who know how to plant, who know the land, and who can create these gardens. We need to educate people about this is what's best to grow in your land, and this is what you can do with it. Yeah, we're growing eggplant. Okay, here's an easy meal to make with eggplant. So that way they can help themselves once the community involvement has gone away. And we need to really foster these community bonds. When we are able to grow community gardens or even school gardens, a lot of people can either take that home and feed themselves, or it can be sold at farmers markets and help other people, or it can be donated to food banks, which helps everybody. We need to really promote our government programs. This is for people who are in my area, our representative at Congress. And you need to call your congressmen and women and tell them that you need to support things like SNAP. You need to keep government funding, because a lot of people say, oh, well, government funding doesn't work. Well, you just don't see it in action. It really does. It really does help people who are below the poverty line and suffering to get the help they need. One thing that you really need to call currently is the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is increasing SNAP benefits, which is helping people who are food insecure get the nutrition they need. If we do this, we can create a community of people helping each other, of people who are fed and who are benefiting, because when we help those who are less fortunate, when we help children, we create a better society. We create a society of productive individuals who are thriving and who are giving back. If we don't do this, it leads to decreased economic mobility and empowerment. When people don't have the food they need, they live in poverty. They live in squalor. This increases the crime rate. This increases the amount of people who aren't healthy, and so they live out on the streets. And nobody wants a society of people who can't help themselves and who drag the society as a whole down. So, we need to help people who are food insecure get the food they need for many reasons. We need to help our society as a whole and bring it up. We need to help people realize that there are health defects that come with having no food, and that there's very simple ways to fix it. We need to support our government programs. We need to erase the stigma that is connected to being food insecure, and we need to teach people how to grow their own food so that way they can help themselves for the future. Thank you.